I want to touch on these basic management things that people tend to overlook, but they're so important on raising these show heifers. And first thing is proper ventilation. We want these calves to take in clean air. If we have stagnant air, it just sets that animal up for respiratory disorders. So one thing you can do is get in that pen and get at what I say calf level, where the calf is breathing, and see how you ingest that air. And if you can't breathe real well, chances are that calf is not going to breathe real well either. So we want to get a lot of fans going in that pen, especially in summertime. Moving air not only improves cow comfort or animal comfort, but it also helps with the hair quality too on that animal. So Lynn's got a couple big fans in the back over there, and if you see a lot of good operations, they're using a lot of fans in their facility. So, but on the same token, we watch drafts on the other animals too, especially in weather like this. You don't want to have too much air on them right now. So I've got an example of a real bad, and it's kind of hard to see, but you see the cobwebs coming down on this pen. This is a really good example of poor ventilation. So there's also a real old exhaust fan in the back that you really can't see, but it's not doing so well on that. But and then exercise for older heifers, yearlings. Like I said before, they're a lot less. Those older heifers are a lot less efficient on converting energy. So you want to give them ample room to exercise and develop lean muscle, and that just helps accentuate their dairiness. So one little tidbit that people like doing is they'll put in the pasture, they'll put feed on one end of the pasture and then water on the other end of the pasture, just to promote heifers going back and forth. So that's always a good thing to do. And then one other consideration, keeping small pen groups and trying to limit competitiveness with those heifers and giving them plenty of bunk space, plenty of resting space. And I like keeping even numbers in pens. Heifers are very social animals, so if they buddy up, they usually do a lot better. So, and obviously keeping animals at similar ages so they're not competing against one each other. That's always a good thing too. And then clean water. It seems very basic, but it's one of the animal's most important nutrients. Keep those waters clean at all times. Working with kids, I'll sometimes ask them if I see a dirty water, I'll ask the kid if they would drink out of that water. Usually the answer is no. So why would your heifer want to drink out of that water? It's usually some good motivation on getting kids to clean up water. And also water consumption drives hay intake too. So if you're trying to get a good middle on some heifers, make sure the water's clean too. Don't overlook that. Here's an example of the dirty water that I found. Can't really see the bottom of that water. So, and then more on animal comfort, cleanliness. One thing that's also really, really important. Keep them dry, use plenty of straw, plenty of shavings. One thing I'll try to equate it to is have a pack very similar to what you do at the show. So keep that heifer nice and dry, nice and clean. Because if they're full of manure and they're wet, you're going to spend more energy on keeping warm and maintenance versus growing. So clipping. Make sure those heifers are always clipped. A lot of the guys like Lynn will clip probably every 3 weeks or so during the show season. Just keeps the animal comfortable. It's as simple as that. And then working with the top line often too. So that's another sideline topic that you work with the top line more often. It's a lot easier to work with the show. So, and then washing improves animal comfort, improves hair quality. A lot of guys will wash once a day. I'm not sure what Lynn does here, but it just improves the animal's comfort. And then foot trimming. Frequency really depends on the kind of or on the foot of the animal. A longer toe, shallower heel animal will need trimming a lot more often than an animal that has a deeper heel and a shorter toe. So, and work with a trimmer that trims a lot of show animals. There's a handful of guys in the state that are really good, usually the guys that work with a lot of show animals work on a box, but there are also a couple people that trim with a chute too that do a pretty good job. So. Now this is, moving on, this is kind of the money slide that I think a lot of people probably came to see on how to really feed these animals once you get past the basic stuff. Working on show diets, I always kind of joke around that, especially with older heifers, that corn is kind of a dirty word. It's an energy feed, and we want to basically push higher quality protein in these animals. A good way of relating to it is if you think of the old fad diet, Atkins diet, that's kind of what we're doing with these heifers is we want to push higher quality protein and limit carbs and really push frame development and burn fat. So I always try to stress to people too to monitor body conditioning at all times. Don't forget about them. And then when I talk about higher quality protein sources, as nutritionists, we don't talk crude protein as we once did years ago. We tend to focus more on amino acids now. And the two most limiting amino acids on dairy cattle are lysine and methionine. And we talk a lot about amino acid profile on feeds. And so kind of my favorite 4 feeds that have a good amino acid profile are high-pro soybean meal. It's really high in lysine, pretty high in methionine. Your stellar soybean meals, which is basically roasted beans that are ground and the fat is taken out. And there's a lot of proprietary products in the market that are of that nature. For instance, Stellar meal, Soy Pass, Soy Best, those kind of products. Again, they're a little lower in crude protein than soybean meal, but the amino acid profile on them, the lysine and the methionine are really good. And then probably one of my favorites is blood meal. And although it's been very, very expensive the last few months, it's probably our best source on lysine, and it's really good on methionine too. But it's not very palatable either, so you get to mask it with some other feeds. And then lastly, but not least, canola meal. Not as high quality as soybean meal, but it doesn't have as much lysine as soybean meal, but the methionine content on it is really good too. So those are kind of my top 4 on when we're talking about higher quality protein sources. So, and one other thing with feeding these too, I always stress on monitoring manure consistency. So the animal will kind of tell us about how much protein we should be feeding. If the animal gets real loose, that kind of tells us that we should be ratcheting back the amount of protein we should be feeding. So. And then forage strategies, and which is almost just as important as your grain feeding. I typically don't like feeding any silage, any haylage, mainly because the passage rate is really high. There's not a lot of room in retention, and so when we want to get a big spring of rib or big depth of rib on these animals, I like using long stem hay, long stem baleage. Seems basic, but don't feed any hay with mold. It obviously limits intake. I like using grass hay, grass alfalfa mixtures. My favorite grasses are orchard grass. A lot of people like using brome, and then the fescues are getting more and more popular too. So, you got to watch the maturity on the hay that we're feeding too. I've run into people that, we're not feeding any corn, but these heifers are still getting heavy. What's the deal? Well, they're feeding 200 relative feed value hay, and so they remember that fiber is also a carbohydrate, so there's still a chance for these heifers to get heavy. So try to feed lower quality hay without sacrificing palatability. We still want these heifers to eat as much as they can. And feeding fresh stuff as the day goes on too. We want to make sure that hay's in front of them at all times if we want to get middle on them. Feeding straw, I get questions on straw all the time. Yes, it is. It's raw fiber and straw. The rumen bugs in the need fiber to feed off of, so we can feed straw if we really need to get weight off these animals. However, we're going to lose some rib on these animals too. So if you're going to do that, make sure the diet is well fortified with the vitamins and minerals. And then since we're going to lose that rib on those animals, I always say start feeding some good hay about a week before the show to get that rib back on those animals. So, but the other thing too that I would say is that let's prevent that animal from getting heavy in the first place, and that's why we should be monitoring body condition on those girls from the get-go, so we don't have to go to that point. But moving on. Other questions I get questions on fermentin, which is basically a byproduct of the human food service industry, and is made up of non-protein nitrogen and some peptides, which are forms of protein. There's a lot of anecdotal information on this stuff, not as much data probably. A lot of people like using it. I have some colleagues that swear by it, but I haven't had good luck with it, mainly because it's not very palatable. But if you can somehow mask the scent of it and the taste of it, it might have a place. So I just haven't had very good luck with it. Microbials and probiotics. My recommendation on that is look for stuff that has a lot of research on it. There's a lot of foo-foo dust out there and stuff that doesn't have research on it. Look for products that have a lot of peer-reviewed research. So they are good for stabilizing the rumen or keep it real steady. And then I get questions on elevating the diet with more vitamin E or chelated minerals, which are fine, but and they're good for immune system, but I would focus more on the basic things and the higher quality protein sources. Anyways, my last slide is basically to wrap up. I would focus on the basic things. I know they've been beaten to a pulp, but a lot of people tend to overlook the basics like clean air, clean water, clean bedding, keeping those animals real comfortable, and thanks, Matt. And making sure that the proper forage is in front of them, the proper hay source, and a good high-quality grain source and protein source. And then a consistency. Doing the same thing every day. Those heifers, cows are creatures of consistency. They want the same thing every day. So feeding them at the same time every day, working with them every time or at the same time every day, they just tend to respond a lot better. So, and I guess that's about it. Anybody have any questions? I'm sorry, what?
How late will coccidia affect them?
Oh, late in terms of age. Coccidiosis, I believe, the challenge starts around they're a month of age or so, and is late. And they're older heifers, breeding age. So that's why we always want to have an eye on for Bovitec or rumen. It's usually pretty standard in most heifer minerals, most heifer grains. So I always think that rumen is probably the most effective on controlling coccidiosis. Bovitec might be a little bit more palatable, but they both have a lot of data.
So why is grass hay preferred over alfalfa hay?
Alfalfa has a higher passage rate, lower rumen retention. Just the higher fiber in grass hay tends to have a fuller rumen, therefore more free rib, more depth of rib.
Most heifer products have kind of standard program that have rumensin in them.
Yeah.
Sometimes get a little heavier with rumensin. Do you recommend that, or
I would say
how the heifer is doing, or what?
I would say it depends on what else is going in the diet. If there's some pretty high quality forages in that diet, then it's probably the elephant in the room versus the rumensin. thank you very much for inviting me.
You'll be around if
I
someone
will be
wants to come
around
up
if you have
and
any more
ask questions.
questions. Feel free to come up. Thank you again.